As of today, Steam Deck has not yet reached a single customer, and yet it has already created waves in PC gaming community. Valve promises the incredible integration of flexibility of gaming on a computer with portability of a handheld console at a price point starting from just $399 US. But why should you, an EVE Online mogul or a prospering combat pilot, care? EVE Online is not a console game, its UI is made of spreadsheets and it has never been even remotely designed for a console experience, right? If you think so, then I have for you some new things to consider. Hello spacefolk! I have started looking into Steam Deck a few weeks ago when Valve finally declared a solid shipment date it aims for and started publishing their own Steam Deck compatibility rating for different games. Since EVE is obviously one of the games I play extremely actively, I decided to check if it has already been verified for its compatibility. And despite it being a rather popular MMO game, it has not been so far included in the reports. Which left me wondering if the deck will run EVE at all and if it can be easily made into a decent console-friendly experience. So I started looking for the information and making some tests. There are three main parts to EVE playability on Steam Deck: hardware compatibility, OS compatibility, and ergonomics of playing. The first one is relatively straightforward. Steam Deck's hardware includes a rather beefy AMD APU with 4 Zen 2 cores running at a speed from 2.4 to 3.5 GHz. This side of the package will easily run more than one client of EVE Online. Then the memory. With 16GB LPDDR5, the console will easily fit multiple clients as well, so the last thing to worry about is the GPU. The APU of Steam Deck includes a graphics chip that uses novel RDNA 2 architecture. A reputable hardware testing channel, Linus Tech Tips, compared RDNA 2 to Vega graphics embedded in recent AMD APUs and claimed that RDNA 2 is faster. That being said, EVE Online Client is well known for its ability to throttle eye candy down to the literal zero level, as you can simply disable the graphics output of your client, leaving only the spreadsheets to control your game. So unless the graphic chip will harbor some soul-crushing bug, which will render the game unstable altogether, we should be good on this part. Which incidentally brings us to the second part of our compatibility check, the operating system. Steam Deck is not going to use Windows. At least it's not going to be shipped with Windows by default, and it appears that Valve has no intent of supporting Windows on Deck, although they are very friendly about this and claim that they would not make any steps just to prevent buyers from being able to run Windows on the console. That being said, the novel RDNA 2 graphics that is used by Deck is not to date supported by Windows drivers, which would alone make the use of Windows on the Deck rather challenging. In addition to that, the SteamOS will be shipping a customized user interface to make use of the Deck convenient and console-like, as well as including some novel features such as the ability to suspend your games and put your console into deep sleep to save power, and then restore the game you were playing in just a few moments, which would be simply missing from a standard Steam client you will have under Windows. So, long story short, installing Windows on the Deck is probably not the best idea, even if it will be possible at all. So what is this SteamOS? If you haven't heard about it in previous years, when Valve tried to organize manufacturing and sales of desktop-like consoles under this OS, SteamOS is essentially a customized Linux operating system. The latter you might have heard about, and it usually has a reputation of an operating system that is free to use and that is used a lot in server segment of computers, or of an operating system for which you either need to be a geek or to have a geek friend to help you with it. The opinions on complexity of Linux have a grain of truth in them, if you want to be a power user or a system administrator. But for an average Joe who wants their computer to write a document in the Office suite, browse Reddit or some Wikipedia articles and watch Netflix, Linux is really not that different from Windows, if different at all. Linus Tech Tips have also recently made a great video where they tried Linux as their daily driver operating system for a month. And despite some rough starts and expected hardware compatibility issues, I'd say they did well. Pretty much all of the problems that LTT brought up will be solved for you on Steam Deck by Valve. The console will have all the drivers provided and tested. It is expected to come pre-installed with the core Steam operating system and Steam itself. So you will have no need to learn Linux administrator skills and figure out how to not wipe out your operating system because you actually tried to install Steam. And all that would have been the end of it if EVE Online worked in Valve's compatibility layer, Proton, out of the box. Unfortunately, it does not. As of today on my Linux installation, which is not Steam operating system though, EVE Online launcher crashes a few seconds after being started, so this as of now is not going to be an easy start. However, I have been an active Linux user for at least 10 years now, and I have tried launching EVE Online with very high rate of success on various hardware setups over these 10 years, so I'm quite positive that in the worst case a minor tweak of the way you start the game itself will make playing possible. When my Steam Deck finally arrives, I will certainly make a video for you on how to launch EVE Client there, and leave a link in the description. My overall experience with the way EVE Online Client works under Linux is that it has some weird graphics defects, but nothing is really game-breaking. And even though Linux is not officially supported by CCP, there are always a couple of devs who do the supporting of the custom launcher and runtime environment for Linux. So a big thank you to those people. But if you want to make sure that EVE Online stays playable on the deck, I strongly recommend you visiting EVE Online forum by the link from the description and voicing your support for having EVE tested for SteamOS compatibility and fixing the bugs that prevent it from being runnable in Proton out of the box. If we say nothing, CCP will likely be oblivious that their game can actually be a good handheld console experience. Which is the last topic of our discussion. Valve's Steam Deck verified program defines 3 tiers of compatibility for the game. The lowest one is of course reserved for the games that are not playable on the deck at all, for various reasons, of which a common one is actually an incompatibility with various anti-cheat solutions used in MMO games. Luckily, that is not our case. The highest tier, on the other hand, requires the game to not only be technically runnable on the deck's operating system and hardware, but also to have proper adaptation of control scheme and UI dimensions. The game must be perfectly comfortable to play by using only the controls provided by sticks, hard buttons, touchpads and triggers. If the game requires you to use the on-screen keyboard, and yes, the deck has touchscreen, to enter the name of your character once in a while, it is a reason good enough for it to be downgraded to the middle tier, playable games. So this is Valve saying loud and clear, to have a good gaming experience on the deck, the game must be at least joystick friendly. So I tried to play EVE Online using joystick, and here's what I found. The first painful realization was that EVE does not actually support joysticks in any way, shape or form. There are no options to even bind any joystick buttons to shortcuts, let alone map some access to some actions like setting up ship's velocity or turn rate. And it would have been the end of this research, but luckily I have sufficient coding skills and knowledge of Linux to make a custom Python script that opens a specified joystick, captures buttons, heads and axes, and then converts those into key presses of a virtual keyboard, movement of the mouse cursor on the screen, and of course left and right mouse clicks. Since Steam is still Linux, the script will likely be as functional on the deck to close this gap. Then I changed my control scheme for the client and made a trial run. Admittedly, after using mouse and keyboard it felt a bit awkward. However, given that even with mouse and keyboard I was an active user of keyboard shortcuts, I got used to the new combat bindings rather quickly. In fact, while I was setting them up, I learned that there are shortcuts to deploying scoop drones, which is something I will be definitely using in my daily gameplay. However, not all the features I would like to be controllable by keyboard were actually there, the most significant of which is the ability to rotate main camera around the ship. Even with my mapping of mouse to joystick axis, it was not convenient to do rapid changes in angle to get a good idea on enemy positions during combat. The second, even bigger flaw is the lack of a shortcut to switch overview tabs. Without mouse, the overview becomes the main tool not only to lock targets, but also to set navigation directions. Aligning to an object via overview was already a part of my navigation routine, but without mouse it became the crucial one. And as you know, EVE does have a lot of objects in space, so when you get into a combat situation, you want to have some navigation targets like moons and literal junk in the form of shipwrecks to be absent from the overview, to make rapid and precise judgment about the combat situation. Hence, being able to set up multiple tabs of overview for different situations and switch between them is a crucial part of gameplay. And while setting them up is of course present, switching them requires precise mouse clicks on their headers. So this part needs some work from CCP's UI team. Finally, let's sum things up. EVE is likely to be very playable based on the deck's hardware specs. EVE does not run well with SteamOS main two full games, Proton, but decades of running EVE on various Linux systems suggest that there will be no major issue of running EVE outside of Steam, using the existing customized launchers, which, to be supported in future, need your support to let CCP know that EVE on Linux is played by more than 1% of their player base. And lastly, Playing EVE using controller is not officially supported, but can be made with a minor application of custom tools, which I will be happy to share together with the instructions on how to use them in future videos. The overall experience is not yet polished, and there are many ways to work on it. So if you are interested in me testing different gameplay styles with only joystick as a controller, please like this video and leave a comment so that I know that this is a topic you find interesting, and I will do my best to make a few dedicated videos with the detailed descriptions on how I set up shortcuts and mappings of joystick keys and what is my experience with those particular gameplay styles. Ideally, I would prefer to test using the Steam controller, but that one needs purchasing, and I would only go that way if this topic gets a huge interest from you. Some 500 likes on this video would be a good enough reason for that. That being said, thank you for watching this video and sticking with this channel even though I have not posted in a while. I was really surprised to see new subscribers coming during the last few months. I will try to make new content for you more often now, as the rush I had in my primary job is finally over, and I hope you will not be disappointed with my new ideas. So see you in the next video and fly safe!